Hi, Russ of Aquariumex here. A lot of people ask me about the best isopods for arid and semi-arid bioactive enclosures. So let's get right to it. First of all, it's important to recognize that even the isopods most tolerant of dryness are just not going to survive long-term in an enclosure that is completely bone dry. Even the most thoroughly desert-adapted isopod species that I'm aware of, Hemilepistis reameri, is dependent upon the relatively humid microclimate of its burrow system in order to survive. So, somewhere in your arid bioactive enclosure, your isopods are going to need at least one hydration station, where moisture is always present. It's generally best to locate it in a cooler area of the vivarium. In some cases, this may be as simple as keeping the substrate under and around the water dish damp at all times. Or you may want to get a little more elaborate by providing one or more flat stones or cork bark slabs or something along those lines with damp sphagnum moss underneath. For our leopard gecko, we've been using Biodude's Terra Sahara substrate for a few years now. Terra Sahara is formulated to stay dry on the surface and yet retain moisture down below, which allows both the gecko and the isopods to regulate their moisture needs. For more information about that substrate, I'll put a link in the description. Most reptiles and invertebrates that come from arid environments and need high ventilation, high temperatures, and low humidity will still benefit if there are one or two humid hides in the enclosure. This works out really nicely for the isopods, but if you keep something that needs extremely dry conditions everywhere in the enclosure, isopods just aren't going to work out in there, and you might need to look at something else as a cleanup crew. Now, I'm sure that you are aware that isopods are crustaceans and not insects. Neither reptiles nor invertebrates, however, are particularly diligent students of taxonomy, and so your insectivores may well decide to snack on your cleanup crew. There are several things that you can do to mitigate this snacking behavior, however. One is to choose a species of isopod that is most active when your pet is least active. A nocturnal isopod is somewhat less likely to be munched on by a diurnal lizard than by a nocturnal scorpion, for instance. Another measure you can take is to choose an isopod that is too small and or too fast to be a likely snack for your pet. You should also provide plenty of cover for the isopods, and preferably introduce them into the enclosure sometime before you introduce any potential isopod predators, so that they can establish a healthy population. A third recommended countermeasure is to keep a culture of your chosen isopod species outside of your arid bioactive setup. This way you can periodically boost the population of isopods in the enclosure as needed, and this is especially recommended if you're keeping something that will snack on the isopods. So, now that we've established that a hydration station is an absolute necessity for your isopods to flourish, and we've addressed ways to keep all of your biocustodians for desert enclosures from becoming biocustodians for dessert, I want to take a moment to thank my patrons at Patreon. If there's a better way to help keep me creating educational content about isopods and other fascinating creatures, I haven't found it yet. And on Patreon, to show my gratitude, I share sneak peeks, answer questions on live streams, and more. If you'd like to contribute for as little as $1 a month, please click the link that I'll put at the end of this video. So, now let's look into some specific isopod species that can do well in arid vivaria, as long as their husbandry needs are met. Porcellio dilatatus, or the giant canyon isopod, is a fairly large, stocky isopod that spends much of its time under the substrate. It does have a hearty appetite though, and will venture out, usually under cover of darkness, to fulfill its duties as a biocustodian. It's a pretty tolerant and adaptable species, and its fossorial and nocturnal habits tend to make it a good match for arid vivaria with potential isopod predators. Porcellionides pruinosus, the wild type of which is known as the powder blue isopod, is one of the most popular choices for arid vivaria, and there are plenty of good reasons why. It's tolerant of warm conditions, and in fact often seems to seek them out. It can handle a degree of dryness within reason. It isn't very large, and it's a faster moving isopod than most. And these factors will tend to dissuade some species from preying on it, but will only encourage others. Fortunately, it is a prolific species, so it can often keep up with moderate predation. Porcellionides pruinosus tends to be out and about during the day more than many isopods, and I've been keeping this species in our bioactive leopard gecko setup for several years now, with great results. As an added bonus, this species comes in a variety of color morphs, so it can make for quite an attractive cleanup crew. If you'd like more detailed care information on this species, there's one of them right up there somewhere that you can watch once you've finished this video. Cylisticus convexus is another hardy burrowing isopods. They're also moderately prolific, do a good job at cleaning up, and are adaptable to a variety of situations. These should probably be more popular in arid setups as long as they have hydration stations available. I have a care video about this species as well. Armadillidium nasatum is an underrated isopod species in my opinion, and is a pretty solid choice as a biocustodian in an arid enclosure. It's more prolific than Armadillidium vulgare and tends to tolerate a wider range of conditions as well. Comes in a variety of colors, and its ability to conglobate gives it an advantage possibly in drier habitats. To be honest, there are probably quite a few species in the Armadillidium genus that can do pretty well as cleanup crew isopods in arid enclosures. For example, I've used Armadillidium maculatum, the zebra pillbug, successfully. And I've seen arid bioactive enclosures with Armadillidium vulgare as well. Do you have a favorite isopod for arid bioactive enclosures that I didn't mention here? If so, please comment below and describe a little bit about your setup. Thanks for watching today. I post videos every Tuesday and Friday, all on aquarium and vivarium pets, with lots of isopod content. Please feel free to share, rate, comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe. And then tap the bell and choose notifications all so you don't miss my next video.